All right, guys. Robbie Falk here from the humble abode in Choctaw County. Thanks for joining me. Obviously, huge news coming out for Mississippi State baseball. Chris Lemonis out as head coach at Mississippi State after 7 seasons. Didn't get 7 full seasons in. He's fired before the final 3 weeks of the regular season. Mississippi State still has SEC series against Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Missouri, and of course two other midweek non-conference games. So still a good portion of this season remaining, and Zach Selman decided to make this call now. A little bit of a surprise for those who are following this, and for those who are even like loosely following this on the national level, that Zach Selman made this move. I really felt like this would come after the season. Been hearing rumblings that this was probably going to happen, but I thought that this was going to happen after the season for Mississippi State. I did not anticipate Zach Selman making this move the way that he did. This is the second mid-year firing that Zach Selman has made since becoming the AD at Mississippi State, obviously letting Zach Arnett go 2 seasons ago after a rough start in football. And here we are, Chris Lemonis let go with 3 weeks remaining during the season. I got word of this about 1 hour or so before we decided to run with it, that this was happening. So this came together relatively quickly. I think Mississippi State spoke with Chris Lemonis earlier today, and then Zach Selman spoke with the baseball team and told them, what was going on here. And by late afternoon, we were given word that we could go ahead and run the story after the team had been spoken to. So kind of a bombshell here for Mississippi State fans, and that it happened when it did. Not a whole lot of inklings that it was going to come right now, but I think the noise in within this fan base, and the administration was not very happy with what was going on as well. I think it had just grown to the point that everybody was just ready for change, and I think that's something that a lot of these national writers don't understand. There's a lot of people that are upset about the firing when it came and how this happened. And we can argue that all day long, but at the end of the day, these people are not around this baseball program on a day-to-day basis. They're friends with Chris Lemonis. They've spent a lot of time around Chris Lemonis, so they are obviously they feel a little closer to that situation on Chris's side. And I see that. I see that as a group of people that have friendships with a coach. They don't want to see this kind of firing happen the way that it did. And I've seen a lot of people talk about how he's got he had an opportunity to be fired after the season, and he should have been given that opportunity to kind of try to turn this thing around. But here's the problem: we now have 4 years of evidence from Chris Lemonis and this baseball program that shows that they were not living up to the expectations that have been set here. And as I've said for the last few weeks, those expectations were cemented by Chris Lemonis when he won the national championship. I have framed articles up all in this office from that national championship run that Chris Lemonis made happen at Mississippi State as the head coach. And here's the thing: we can't talk about Chris Lemonis and his coaching without mentioning the national championship. You cannot coach a baseball team and just stumble into 250-win seasons. What he did those 2 seasons, while I believe was heavily influenced by the players on the team, by the fact that they were very talented and they had a lot of the spirit about them that they could go out and go win ball games without much of a jump start. Chris Lemonis still had to manage that baseball team, and for 2 seasons he sent them to Omaha in his first 2 years. He deserves a lot of credit for that. You cannot take away the fact that Chris Lemonis brought Mississippi State its first national championship. And anybody that tries to take that away, I think you're looking at it from the lens of a fan that's watched this for the last 4 years. And I just don't think that you can pull that part of his career and his resume away from him. He deserves some praise for that. Now, a lot of that roster was built by other coaches, and I totally understand that argument. But you don't win the national championship without Will Bednar or Braylon Skinner scores the winning run, or Hootie, a guy that came in and performed in several different roles for Mississippi State as a starting pitcher and a reliever. He helped Mississippi State get to national championship. Those are players that Chris Lemonis recruited. So he did add some key pieces to that roster. The MVP of the entire tournament was Will Bednar, who he recruited. So he deserves some credit. He absolutely does. But at the end of the day, he was given 4 years to rectify the situation, and it didn't happen. Last year was an anomaly. Last year was the one difference that we saw from the other 3 seasons. He's going on now 3 years out of the last 4 where he's going to have a losing record in the SEC. Now, mathematically, he could have come back here and he could have won 9 consecutive ball games. It's happened before at Mississippi State. He could have done it. I don't think that it's completely impossible, but it's hard to believe after what we've seen from Mississippi State that they wouldn't have lost a few games in there. And what you're looking at now for Mississippi State to make the tournament, you essentially have to finish 9-2 in the regular season to really feel like you're going to make the tournament. And they cannot lose a game against Missouri. And you need to win the next 2 series to safely get in, I believe. And that's really difficult to do. You're going to have to beat Nick Mingione in Kentucky, and then you're going to have to beat Ole Miss as well. And, that's going to be tough. That's going to be really difficult. So that's kind of where we're at here. I think what I've been told and what really went into this decision is Mississippi State could not afford some kind of fluke run to happen here at the end of the season. And Chris Lemonis continue on, and then next year we have some of the same issues that we've seen from Mississippi State the previous 3 years or previous 4 years. So I think what State wanted to do is rip the Band-Aid off. There's some negative press, of course, coming from people that cover college baseball. But again, these people don't have any stake in Mississippi State. They're not giving any money to Mississippi State. They have no dog in the fight. They cover college baseball for a living, and they're friends of Chris Lemonis. So, of course, they're going to side with the coach on this situation. And at the end of the day, I just don't think that it really mattered when he was fired. I think ultimately the end result was going to be Chris Lemonis is no longer the coach here, with the exception of him making a run very similar to Mississippi State doing it in 2018 when they went all the way to the College World Series semifinals. And Zach Selman felt like that didn't need to happen for them. They wanted new leadership with this team. And so that's the direction they're going. At the end of the day, Zach Selman is responsible for this program. Zach Selman is responsible for all the athletic department at Mississippi State. If every decision ultimately falls on him. And if his ultimate goal is to get another job somewhere else, or if his ultimate goal is to stay here and succeed, he's got to make decisions like this. This is the same conversation that I had whenever they fired Zach Arnett in the middle of the season 2 years ago. Zach Selman is the one who has to answer for all of this. And he felt like this was the best thing that Mississippi State could do in a situation. I'm sure he didn't want to do this, but he really felt like for Mississippi State, the money that they're putting into this program, keeping this fan base happy, because I mean, I'm hearing from fans on a daily basis, and I would say just from the people that I hear from and the gauge that I can take from this fan base that I've been around my entire life, we're in the 90% of this fan base ready for new leadership. Everyone's kind of tired of this, and I'm sure you'll find a group of fans that are okay with it, that are good with Chris Lemonis continuing to be the head coach, and that are fine with everything that's going on. But the people that actually want to win, the people that actually want to move forward as a program and to kind of get away from this mundane, situation that they've found themselves in, they're ready for a change. And that's basically what it boils down to. The stakeholders in this program, the people that are giving the money for this program, are ready for a change. And that's where this came from. So at the end of the day, you're putting in 10,000 plus people on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on an SEC weekend to watch Mississippi State lose ball games. And it's become just a nice little atmosphere for fans to come to from around college baseball and watch their team beat Mississippi State. And Mississippi State people are tired of it for the most part. The most part, people are tired of being known as just a fun little atmosphere to go watch college baseball. They have a taste of a national championship. They've won a national title and immediately went down to the bottom of the barrel in the SEC. And that's not acceptable at Mississippi State. When your fans are putting in the money that they're putting in to this program year in and year out, fans are coming here, flocking here on a weekly basis to watch college baseball, unlike anybody else in college baseball. Almost every single high attendance record that's out there in baseball belongs to Mississippi State. I think 23 to 25 or something is Mississippi State. And those are legit records. You know, you can argue the numbers or whatever, but Mississippi State's sending people to the park in droves, and they're watching losing baseball right now, and people are tired of it. So I want to address first, where does Mississippi State fall in the pecking order of college baseball when going out and trying to find a head coach? So let's look at what Mississippi State has done from a hiring perspective since Ron Polk. Ron Polk comes in from Grand Canyon, and actually he was from Georgia. He was graduated from Grand Canyon, Georgia Southern, I believe. And he is the one that kind of set the tone for Mississippi State being a premier place in college baseball. It had had some success under Paul Gregory. I mean, obviously they went to the College World Series and competed and won SEC championships, but not to the level that Ron Polk would help build it. And he built it into a must-watch baseball program. College baseball was not a marquee sport in athletics, and he really found ways to get fans to game, marketing, getting high attendance, bringing in some showtime in baseball, recruiting really helped with that as well, bringing in great players that ended up going on to the MLB and that played in the College World Series and were on a national stage. So Ron Polk really set the tone. When he left in the late 90s, Mississippi State just promoted its pitching coach. And so you go from that back to Ron Polk whenever Pat McMahon left for Florida. So you've hired a coach that was already here. So you didn't really have a national search for either one of those coaching hires. After Ron Polk retired, Mississippi State hired John Cohen, who is a graduate of Mississippi State, played at Mississippi State. He went to Kentucky and won an SEC championship there at a program that had never really done anything. It just made sense for Mississippi State to make that hire. I would call that one of the elite hires in baseball around that time. John Cohen had become one of the best coaches in baseball, but he also had ties to Mississippi State. So I guess what I'm getting at here is Mississippi State has not gone out and found a major sitting Power 4, Power 5 head coach during their existence without some kind of tie to Mississippi State. Because right after John Cohen, you hire one of the top assistants in college baseball, in Andy Canizero, but not a marquee name. That's a guy that was a fast rising prospect. I think he would have been hired by someone with a big name regardless. But Mississippi State, that's the direction they went when John Cohen was in charge. Canizaro gets fired. You promote. I don't think it's a promotion, but Gary Henderson was the interim head coach to finish out 2018. Instead of riding with Henderson, who had made a run to the semifinals of the College World Series, John Cohen decided to do another search. And I thought was the right decision. And there were some big-time names in that search. Jim Schlossnagle was in that conversation. A lot of people felt like State was going to make a huge hire because they had just been to the College World Series on the cusp of a national championship series and had a really good roster returning. And it really felt like they were going to make a big-time hire. And instead, they hire Chris Lemonis, who not a lot of people that followed baseball at Mississippi State really knew much about. So for a lot of people, it was kind of a disappointing hire when Chris Lemonis was brought in, but I thought he did a really good job of really kind of staying back and not doing too much with the roster that he had. And he really worked with the talent and the leadership that he had with those 2 seasons. It felt like this was a unbelievable hire by John Cohen to go out there and find a coach that had not really done a whole lot at Indiana, but he had maximized what he had at Mississippi State and taken them to that next level. And then ultimately, this just doesn't work out. So when looking at this coaching search, I do think that fans need to temper their expectations a little bit. And yes, you love Mississippi State baseball. Yes, Mississippi State fans support this baseball program as well as anybody in the country. But at the end of the day, I just want people to know it is extremely hard to go out and find and hire a very successful, high level Power Four coach, especially in this sport. It just is. A lot of these coaches, I've said this before, a lot of these coaches, they're happy with where they're at. A lot of these coaches don't want, the pressure that they're going to get from this job with the lack. I don't want to say lack of um, response that you get from the program because I mean this program has accomplished a lot. They've been in the Omaha 12 times. They've won several conference championships, but only one conference title since 1989. They've only won one championship. So and haven't hosted a lot of regionals, haven't hosted a lot of super regionals. So the pressure here is extremely high. And in reality, since 1989, just have not done a whole lot in the SEC. One SEC championship since then, like I said. But it's still a great program, and I still think it's a top 10 caliber program. I just don't think it's a program that can go out and write a blank check and go get anybody they want. So if your expectations are Tony Vitello, that's not going to happen. I don't think Mississippi State's going to get a phone call from Tony Vitello saying, I want this job. He's in a good spot. He can win there. He's won a national championship with Tennessee. He's winning big there. So I think that we do have to temper our expectations on who it is. That doesn't mean that Mississippi State can't go hire a great coach that can make them great again. And it might be an assistant coach. It might be a group of 5 coach. It might be a Power 4 coach that has not won a national championship or has not been in the College World Series. There are still some potentially great coaches out there for Mississippi State to have. But if your names are Tony Vitello, Tim Corbin, Dave Van Horn, maybe even Kevin O'Sullivan, there's been some talk he wants out. I don't know, but I wouldn't put him high on the list of probability right now. If that's your list, you're going to be probably disappointed unless State just has somebody fall in their lap that wanted to get out or whatever. So temper your expectations. Let's talk about realistic opportunity for Mississippi State here. So I've got a hot board on our site right now, and I'm not going to dive into every person that I have on that list. And I'm going to add more. I just wanted to get my top 5 coaches I would call on that site as quickly as possible so I could do some other things. This has been a crazy past 2 hours. I've had my hands full. I'm going to go back and add some more. I have other names that I would like to get on that list. But to me, number 1 on the list of realistic hires, somebody that I really believe State could go hire right now, is Chris Pollard at Duke. That would be one of my first calls. Now, I would shoot for the moon. There's no reason that Zach Selman shouldn't call somebody like Tony Vitello and say, hey, would you be interested? Make the call. It hurts nobody to make that phone call. I don't think it's remotely possible, but you make the phone call anyway. When we're talking realistic candidates, somebody that the money's probably going to be right, has been a very successful program builder at a school that doesn't have resources for college baseball, and is just just a great coach. Chris Pollard checks those boxes. His contract runs out this year from everything that I can find. 2025 was the end of his contract. He signed an extension on his deal in 2023. I believe that was just a 2-year extension. Could be wrong, but that's all I've found on it is that it ends in 2025. He was a pretty deep candidate for the Miami job 2 years ago, decided to come back and coach at Duke. I'm sure he got a substantial raise. What is that raise? I don't know because Duke's a private institution. So I haven't found what his salary is, but I can promise you it's nowhere near what Mississippi State's been paying Chris Lemonis. So Chris Lemonis' salary, I reported last week, is let me see if I can find it. So I had put in a Freedom of Information request to Mississippi State for Lemonis' contract because there was a lot of misinformation on when his contract expired. What was he getting paid, all that stuff. So looking at his contract, it was obviously the contract was extended after the national championship in 2021, and that was for the first year after the national championship, $765,000. This year, he was set to make $840,000. So the contract went up by $25,000 every single season after he initially signed it. So this year was making $840,000. And remember, that's not his entire contract. He's going to get private donations from the Bulldog Club. Basically, he was making well over $1 million with Mississippi State. And then Mississippi State essentially worked. It's kind of a workaround from the IHL to extend his contract out to 6 years. So there was an addendum to that initial contract extension in 2021 where he would get $840,000 in 2025, and then $865,000 next year. So all that to say, Mississippi State was paying Chris Lemonis well over $1 million. I could see them doing that again for this coach, but it really depends on who the coach is. They could probably get Chris Pollard for under $1 million, and you're not going to have to pay a huge buyout with him either because his contract, if it's correct, runs out this year. So Chris Pollard to me is one of, if not the most realistic, best coaches you can hire. Some other coaches here that have been mentioned, and I have mentioned them as well. Wes Johnson at Georgia and Nick Mingione at Kentucky. That's two former Mississippi State assistants. Mingione obviously was here for a longer period. He was here from 2009 when John Cohen was hired to 2016. Wes Johnson left Mississippi State the same year as Nick Mingione after that SEC championship. Mingione became the head coach at Kentucky in 2017. Wes Johnson went on to be Arkansas's pitching coach. He went to the Minnesota Twins. He went to the LSU Tigers. And now he's at Georgia as the head coach. Has been really successful. Here's the problem with both of those coaches. I don't know if Mississippi State, first of all, is going to spend the money that it's going to require just to buy these coaches out. Wes Johnson is extended out to 2030, I believe, and he got a extension that takes him all the way to the 2030 tour, the 2031 season. And I believe Nick Mingione is also around 2030. He signed an extension as well. SEC championship last year, has done some really good things in the last couple of seasons. And both of those coaches also making over $1 million. So on top of the fact that you're going to have a huge buyout with those two coaches, you're going to have to pay them over what they're making now. I don't think that Wes Johnson's going to leave Georgia, even if Mississippi State called. It's a very good spot for him. He's winning there. They're pumping in resources. They're paying him a lot of money. And it's just absolute gold mine in terms of talent in the state of Georgia. So I don't see Wes Johnson leaving. I think that Georgia, from a resource standpoint, as far as the recruiting is concerned, it's hard to beat. Um, that, like I said, they're finally tapping into supporting baseball a little bit more. So I don't see him leaving. And then Nick Mingione, I think he would listen to Mississippi State, but my question is going to be how much money Mississippi State spends on the search, and whether or not they want to spend that much money on Nick Mingione, when I believe that Chris Pollard is just as good a coach, if not better, and has done it at a place like Duke. That while Kentucky has been somewhat similar in results, um, they're in the SEC, and they've obviously had better resources for baseball than Duke has. They've upgraded their facilities. They're spending over $1 million, I think 1.4 million on Nick Mingione. They've really invested in him, and I just don't know if they are going to. I don't really see him making that move, but we'll see what happens. So that's just a few thoughts from me on the coaching search. Um, and like I said, I think that Mississippi State can make a good hire without it being someone that has been a proven Power Four sitting head coach. I think that this could still be a really good hire from Zach Selman. It's all about getting the right person. Doesn't matter if this person has been to the national championship, won titles, or whatever. You're trying to find the right fit for Mississippi State in this era. Somebody that understands the transfer portal, someone that understands coaching and development, NIL, all that stuff. I want a fiery personality that's going to come in here and is going to show some fire, show some spirit, and get this fan base excited again. That's really what you're looking for in a head coach, and it doesn't have to be someone that has already done it. I think there's some big names out there. Just looking at some of your thoughts here. Dusty Coward, seemed like we lost that dirtbag mentality. We had a little bit of it last year. Yeah, I think that was a big issue because I don't think that Chris Lemonis was that rah-rah guy. And what he really relied on during his time here was the fact that players kind of did that for them. David Mershon, Jake Mangum, Elijah McNamee, Tanner Allen, those guys went out there and kind of willed themselves to games. And a lot of times that's what you need. I mean, you do need players like that. You don't need a coach having to infuse all that into players. But there just wasn't many players like that on the roster during these 3 years that State really struggled. Last year, they kind of willed themselves to it, even when they struggled with guys like Mershon and Cal Steven. They were just mentally tough. These other three teams, like, you can kind of see it on their faces when things go bad. And I think that was a big part of it. Adam Go, do you think someone would allocate the correct amount of funds to baseball to hire a good coach? I think he'll be smart about it. I don't think he'll be reckless. I don't think he will be cheap, but I think he will do what makes sense. Jason E's kind of reiterating my point from earlier. Regardless of who was on the team in 2021, Lemonis did something no other coach previously could do, and those previous coaches had better talent at times. I agree. I liked that 2021 team, but I don't think that was State's most talented team. I think that, and I think Lemonis had a lot to do with that team's success because of the kind of coach that he is, because he did stay back and he didn't mess with anyone. He put everybody in position and he stood back and he let them play. And they played loose, and that's why that team was never out of a ball game. So I still give him a lot of credit for that championship. Robert Hill, would Butch Thompson ever leave Cohen? Yeah, that's another guy that I just don't know is super realistic for State. I think he really enjoys Auburn. I think he likes what he's built there. They have really invested in him and those facilities as well. So the first guys that people really jump to seem to be um, Butch Thompson and Nick Mingione, and rightfully so because those guys were a big part of Mississippi State whenever John Cohen was here. But that I just feel like those guys are happy where they're at. Brad Dolph, go get Skylar Meade from Troy. I like him a lot. I think he would do well here. And by the way, Sven reminds me here, Justin Parker is taking over interim. If I didn't mention that, I'm sure most of y'all already saw that. Um, but yeah, and Vitello makes $3 million a year. State has no chance of getting Tony Vitello. Jason, if you go to assistant route, I would go with Josh Elander at Tennessee. Not a bad idea at all. I think that's definitely one of the guys that I would look at as an assistant. If you're looking at assistants, Elander, Will Coggin, um, guy at Arkansas, his name escapes me. Pitching coach Max Weiner at Texas. Those are guys that I would look at in the assistant coaching realm. And I've said this so many times. There's many times that I would rather hire an assistant coach in the SEC for a great program um, than I would a group of five coach. And the reason being because they have coached in this league and they've won recruiting battles in this league for great talent. So Jordan Lane Burroughs, Christian Ostrander, and Cliff Godwin, not bad choices. Um, Burroughs is a really good coach. I'd be slightly interested to see what he would do at a place like Mississippi State with these resources. I don't think Ostrander would leave Southern Miss. Godwin, that's an interesting one. I wonder how much longer he wants to be at East Carolina. Just hasn't been able to get over the hump there, but that would be a good hire as well. Tom Walter from Wake, great coach. I don't know if he'd be interested or not. Jimmy Boone, the Alabama coach, Rob Vaughn, making 900,000. Um, so that it'd be tough to pull. You'd have to go way over that for him, and I don't know if he's worth it yet. I'm thinking probably 1.5 would get him here. I just don't know. I also think that Greg Byrne would do what it takes to try to keep him. Zachary Treadway, have you mentioned Dan Hefner? I have not. Everybody I talk to in the college baseball realm says that he will not leave Dallas Baptist. So I don't know. Mark Wazakowski from Oregon, one of my favorites, Ford. Would definitely give him a call. Um, a guy that spent over 20 years on the West Coast coaching. So, those West Coast guys, they tend to like to stay out there. He has been to Purdue. He coached it a little bit at Florida. He followed Andy Lopez over there, but quickly shifted back to Arizona when Lopez went to Arizona. So I don't know, but I would definitely call him. He was a guy that John Cohen had inquired about in the last coaching search before hiring Lemonis. And since that time, he's proven to become an even better coach. He went to Oregon, has done some really nice things there. Dylan Batia, Brian O'Connor from Virginia. He's not leaving Virginia. Owen Hines, the Clemson head coach. That's Dan Backich from Clemson. I have heard that he was interested in looking around. I don't know how accurate that is, but I would definitely call him. He's a really good coach. either we invest in our future and pay the right amount, or we stay again here, like with Vic Schaefer, the ladies soccer coach Armstrong, who left us simply with money. Well, I don't think that Armstrong left simply for money, and I really don't think Vic did either, because State was willing to pay both of those competitive money. I think Vic had some demands that Mississippi State did not want to reach. So I guess you could lump that in if you wanted to, but there was already kind of a disconnect between he and John Cohen. James Armstrong just simply wanted to go to Auburn. His wife is from there. He coached there. It's a better job by far. Mississippi State's one of the worst soccer programs in SEC history. That's just facts. They really did a really good job with him here, but traditionally they've not been very good. So, but I get your point. You can't let this program just go to waste. You need to go out there and hire a good coach. I think you can do that without having to blow a lot of money. I think that this coaching search can be successful with a good coach under $1 million. I really believe that. If you have to go over $1 million, you do it. But I think that they can be smart with their money while also hiring a really good coach. That's the challenge for Zach Selman, who is not a baseball guy. He's going to have to, use the help of people that are, and use his resources that way. But I think you can still be smart with how you spend your money here, because at the end of the day, I mean, you're having to spend a lot of money in college athletics now. With all these different sports, revenue sharing coming up, you're trying to get your football program back on track. So they do have to be smart with what they're doing. Practice and stuff. I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on, but I appreciate you guys for stopping in. I just wanted to stop in and discuss a little bit with you what I know, what I'm thinking, kind of the direction of things for Mississippi State. We might try to get back on here and do something else as we get going. But I want to encourage you guys to come check us out at Maroon and White Daily. We're going to have updates throughout this, and I don't mean just me. I'm going to do the best that I can with my sources, but we have people on our site that are as plugged in as anybody else, and you want to be a part of that. We let you know before the news broke that things were happening, and this was about to turn, and it indeed happened several minutes later. So our folks at Maroon and White Daily knew Chris Lemonis was going to be fired before the news came out. We've been talking about this for weeks. We've had a hot board by fans. We have people in there that are closely associated with the MLB, that work within that industry. We have people that are closely associated with Mississippi State, and they give their thoughts. It's a place where you can be filled with knowledge. So we want you to come check us out. We have a deal going, $1 for the first week. Trying to get a better deal. We'll see if that happens. But for right now, if you want to sign up right now, it's just $1. And I promise you, you're not going to want to leave. We also have Mississippi State transfer portal news on the board coming daily with basketball and football. So come check us out today at Maroon and White Daily. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already. We would love to have you join us here and be updated anytime we come on here with a live reaction or talking dogs, things like that. So appreciate you guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week. And once again, come check us out at Maroon and White Daily for the coverage of this coaching search. Hopefully this thing is relatively quick after the season ends, and we're able to get Mississippi State baseball back on track. All right, guys, we'll catch you down the road.